Culture, culture, kiltsi, bunka, cultura. So many ways to say it, so many ways to interpret it, so many things it impacts, yet we are all connected by it the same way. The very essence of who we are as human beings is passed down from generation to generation. Our values are basically genetic. Welcome to the Culture Show. Throughout the show, we will examine the ins and outs of culture and how it impacts our lives. Hey Google, what's culture?
According to Wikipedia, culture is the social behavior and norms found in human societies. There are more than 6.5 billion people in the world today. 195 countries. This total comprises 193 countries that are member states of the United Nations and 2 countries.
Culture Show. First, we'll introduce the panel. I'm going to start with my left. Luigi, please state, well, I've done that for you already, but state your name and where you're from and what culture represents for you.
My name is Luigi. I'm from Italy, as my name obviously says. Culture represents a lot for me because I come from a country that has a long history of culture, and I come from a family specifically who values culture a lot. My father was an architect, and my family in general has been in the music business for practically all of my youth. Then I came to America, and now I'm an American with different interests, but bringing with me my cultural bag, as they say.
It's interesting you bring up music. We'll be talking about that also, how it impacts music or how actually music impacts culture. So we'll expand on that later. And we have here Robert.
Absolutely. Robert S. Bay. I'm from America. I'm a free national Moorish Native American. Culture to me represents the sustaining power of the people. I think it's one of the most important aspects of society, and we all have connecting tissue to it, no matter what culture you come from. So it's an honor to be here, and I'm glad to participate.
The sustaining power of people. I like that.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Monty?
Yes, my full name is Muntanga, but I go by Munti, and I was born in Zambia and moved out here for school, living in Miami. And culture for me, I would say, is a way that messages are passed on from generation to generation. So it's essentially like a form of like intellectual property passed on through music, dance, food from our ancestors, and how they keep their message alive within us.
Nice. I like that. Very cool. Christina?
Hi, I'm Christina Konami, and I was born and raised in Nebraska, but my mom is Japanese, so although growing up it was an American culture, but when I came home it was a Japanese household, and culture to me is really just my identity. It's my morals and values, and I think it's a great way to connect with everyone.
Nice. I like that. Patrick?
My name is Patrick. I'm from Haiti, and culture for me is everything. Say that. It's really about, for me, culture is art, food, and it's also the foundation of who really are. If you think about who you are, you can always go back to the culture, to where it all started. I have Tahitian. My grandmother is Tahitian, and of course I have my African background. So I have Indian and West Indian. So it's great for me when I talk about culture. I'm always excited to be talking about culture, different cultures, and especially as a chef. So I cook a lot. I do a lot of stuff: African food, sushi, Japanese, Venezuelan, very good empanadas. I mean, that's the place for me to be, to learn about culture.
And yeah, you're mentioning food, and definitely food is going to be a major topic, especially that we just had some wonderful food from multiple cultures here, so we're going to expand on that a little bit. And Yubesca from Venezuela. En español, por favor.
Ok, mi nombre es Yubesca, soy de Venezuela y tengo 3 años viviendo acá en Miami. Y para mí la cultura son hábitos creados por el hombre, habilidades que van acompañados de creencias, tradiciones, religiones y diferentes tipos de comida.
Nice. I don't speak Spanish, but I understood everything she said, so there you go. All right, folks, thank you guys. For those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Jeff. I am born and raised in Haiti, and I've been living in the States for about 15 years now. And you mentioned music. Obviously, I have some musical background also, and definitely I have a food background because I like to eat. So, but we'll get started with the first question of the day. Let's talk about the misconceptions, the stigmas of your respective culture, and we'll start with Christina.
Okay, well, for me, the biggest misconception would probably be like, although I'm Asian, I'm not Chinese. So, yeah, I've had a lot of people say, okay, like, where are you from? And I'll be like, I'm Japanese, or I'll say I'm Asian. So they'll be like, oh, so you're Chinese, right? And, you know, I have to explain to them, Asian, there's a lot of different countries in Asia that represent Asian. So I am Asian, but I'm not Chinese. You know, there's Taiwan, Japanese, North Korea, South Korea, Vietnamese, and China. But that's probably the biggest thing that I get is, oh, okay, you're Chinese. I know where that is. I know where China is.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's the biggest one.
It's interesting, and it makes sense, and I think it happens in multiple cultures also. We'll see what the rest of the panel has to say. Anybody else to chime in a little?
Well, when I say I'm from Haiti, so like, you on location? When they tell me that, I get the rock look. You know, I was like, how is she supposed to look like?
Right, exactly.
So that's one of a really misconception there, you know. So I have to explain, like, oh yeah, I was born and raised in Haiti. Yeah, my mom also, my dad also.
Right.
But it's where the West Indies is Caribbean. There's a lot of different cultural background there. French, English, Spaniard. It's
true.
A big mix. So if I had to take a DNA test to see where all
It will come back.
I'll be like
It will come back with
1%
system.
of every country.
Right.
It will be like system error. System error. You're gonna say something, Robert?
I'm not Robert, but I will say.
Oh my! See, I told you guys. You're on the same side. I told you guys I would mess up. Luigi, you want to say something, Luigi?
Oh, actually, I don't. I was just about to say I will not even start saying. I'm talking about stigmas. When it comes to Italians, because they're all very well known.
So expand on the most famous one that we all are thinking about right now. Actually,
The one you just mentioned, pasta. Well, Italian means pasta. It means pista. It means mafia. For most people.
Yeah.
It means opera.
Yeah.
It means a lot of things. It means Michelangelo. It means Leonardo. It means a lot of good things and bad things. And this can be said, I'm sure, for every culture of the world. There's a good postcard vision of a country, and there's negative stigmas about every country and every culture. But you have to live with the best ones. The bad ones are usually born out of history, out of things that have happened, out of a certain perception that you have from another place of a certain place, and typically they don't correspond completely to the truth. The very good ones neither correspond sometimes completely to the truth. But as a representative of your culture and your country, you always have to try to represent the best of it.
yeah, that's true.
And to try to mix with the other cultures in the most positive way, in such a way that you basically end up as a human being being liked rather than disliked. And show to other people who are as curious as you are about you, as curious as you are about them, that at the end, there's nothing to fear
Right.
from each other, but rather there's a fascination that has to be built between cultures. If I go to Japan, unfortunately I've never been, it's one of my dreams to visit the Far East, and I know I should go and I will go, but I will go with the eyes of the visitor who's fascinated by all of that. And I think this is something we have to defend as well. The world is much more of a global place, and by being global it also becomes smaller, because everybody tends to be like each other more and more and more. You mentioned music, just think of music. American music became the music of the world, if you think about it. Very much to the loss of other musical traditions that even in their own countries are suffering because of that. But we have to defend them. We have to defend them not because they're inherently good, but because they're inherently different. And difference makes the world bigger rather than smaller. And I'm talking about difference not in negative terms, in positive terms. We need to defend what makes every person, every culture, every country, every place distinct from one another, so that, first of all, we have a cultural enrichment in exchange of ideas that come from different places in different forms. And I'm talking about arts, like I can talk about science as well. Paper was invented in China. Printing was invented in Europe. Look at the combination.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point.
So if we become one enormous gigantic blob of people who all look like each other, think like each other, and do the same things in the same way, we're going to lose an enormous patrimony.
It's an interesting point, but with what you're saying, and also globalization, and with the birth of social media bringing us all very close to each other, we might not see it in our lifetime, but eventually that's probably how, I mean, the overall dynamics of the world might become. So that's an interesting point.
Oh, yes, we have an easier way to communicate, but we don't have to embrace something that comes from somewhere else immediately just because it's cool, or it's positive, or it will help me to get the better job, or a lot of other considerations in which people tend to mix and match and become like each other. It's okay. I'm not saying, I've been living in America for 25 years. I'm very much American in much of what I do. But I also tend to preserve within me, within my attitude, something that comes from where I come from.
Exactly.
And of course I try to present it in the best positive fashion so that, again, people like me rather than disliking me. But that doesn't mean I should, go around necessarily watching football and baseball and basketball rather than soccer.
Yeah.
Let's take a small. So a lot of interesting points all around the table. Robert, what's your interpretation of misconceptions?
Wow. Well, let me first say, because I have to put some things in context. As an American, as a melanin-rich American, I would say the biggest stigma, and we use this term loosely, we use it for slang, but I think the biggest stigma is that there is actually a people called black people and there's a people called white people. I think that people actually think that these are actual nationalities. This table is black, okay, and that light or his shirt is white, but it's not a nationality. So for example, if I say he's Ethiopian, where does he come from? Ethiopia. If I say he's Russian, where does he come from? Russia. If I say he's Jamaican, where does he come from? Jamaica. When you say somebody's black, you don't necessarily tie them to their nativity, their homeland. And in America, our people, they don't have that connection. We've kind of been denationalized, dehumanized, decultured, and a lot of people are lost. And they just throw this term black on themselves or white on themselves. When in actuality, I know when people say that, I know what they mean, but it doesn't mean anything because you're talking about colors. And this is the biggest stigma and the biggest misconception that we're dealing with in America for melanin-rich people. I mean, to be honest, if you're in America and your grandparents are from here and your great-grandparents are from here and your great-great-great, you're American. I mean, it's just that simple. You don't have to call yourself black, you're American. Or if, like you said, you're from Italy, but you've been in America, so you're an Italian American. Absolutely. Exactly. You have your native land and where you're at now. You're tied to your nativity, but you know where you are. You're not going to try to lose your identity to fit in, but you also understand where you're at the same time. And that's what my people are missing. We're disconnected from our nativity. So that's the biggest misconception. I mean, you'll go to a lot of us and say,
And also in a way from the very place you live in,
exactly.
both from where you come and from where you live.
Exactly. So, and that's where there's so much confusion. I can go to somebody with the same hue as me and say, hey, you're not black. You're ready to fight me. You know, not understanding that, no, I'm trying to connect you to something. Hey, go research, you know, your nativity. Go talk to your great-grandparents, or read scripture, or do genealogy. You know what I mean? Do what the research that you can do that's available to you with the resources that you have to connect yourself. So I think that's the biggest taboo or sensitive topic in this country, is the black and white thing. And it has people divided, saying you're black and you're white. You can say you're black. Like you said, you're from Haiti.
I get that.
You're not from Haiti. You're Puerto Rican.
Yeah,
You know,
Dominican.
You're Dominican. You know, I mean, people are looking at shade
Yeah.
instead of culture, background.
Yeah.
You know, the list goes on.
It's
And
like
that,
when you fill out an application for work,
Right.
and it asks for my race.
Right.
I put black.
right.
Yeah.
So, but I even had someone say, you put black. Like, oh, you asked me my race. Yeah,
Right,
asked my
right,
color.
right.
I almost felt like saying that,
Right,
but I
right.
didn't want to be rude.
That's a very good point.
But it's
They ask for your race and
they
not
ask-
your color.
Yeah, they ask
So-
for my race. So I put
That's
black.
the issue.
My race.
That's the issue.
You know?
That's the
but
that's
they
the
look
biggest
at me
issue.
like, but you're not like, if I ask you where I'm from, can
Right.
you actually tell me where I'm from?
Right,
Because
exactly.
I've been misconceived for being Indian looking,
Yeah,
Bangladesh.
absolutely.
That means we all really look alike at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
we are all mixed.
Right.
Yeah.
We're all a big
You know?
pot. You know?
But
Yeah.
What do you think, Yubisco?
Ok, mi forma de pensar es que considero que todos los países, todo el mundo suele tener malos entendidos. Hablando en un caso en particular, en mi caso, es que nosotros los latinos, en especialmente los venezolanos, tenemos una forma muy amorosa de saludar. Cuando vamos a saludar, damos un fuerte abrazo, un beso, y utilizamos frases como,
En
hola mi
Francia,
amor.
2 besos.
Yeah, in Europe, some countries is to kiss, alright? Bueno, en mi país es hola mi amor, hello my love, alright? Y algunas personas suelen ver eso como un acto de mucha confianza, o sea, como abuso de confianza. Y no es así, solo que los latinos solemos ser personas alegres, divertidas y somos muy afectuosos. Y ese es uno de los malos entendidos y estigmas que más he vivido acá desde que llegué, porque al principio las personas cuando, hola mi amor, y yo, ok.
Yeah.
Okay?
It's culture shock.
Sí, ya.
Culture shock.
Ya.
All right, good. Monty, we haven't heard from you. What are your thoughts?
I mean, just there's the most common misconception. Hopefully, it's being eradicated. People are getting educated about the level of poverty in Africa and how that's always the thing that's highlighted. Is how, basically everybody in Africa is poor, and I believe it's getting better, but it used to be so bad that people would think like would live in trees, like there was no actual infrastructure, and we had pet lions or so just outrageous things. I don't know if people were trying to be funny or if they really just didn't know any better. But yeah, it's stuff like that that's really unfortunate that that education is not being accessed by everybody and people are not aware of the richness that Africa is and how every country has its own main export that basically supplies the whole world with all the things that they're able to, build and make. It's like that's the source of all of that. So yeah, that's like an important thing for us.
It's very funny you say that. From being from Haiti also, I mean, I don't get a lot of the stuff you get. You look from every other country in the world except for Haiti. I'm like, why?
Right.
So, well, because you're not black. I'm like, well, I am. I might be light skin or whatever you want to call that. That's number one. Number two is religion. Say, oh, do you practice voodoo? I've heard that many times. And actually, I've used that to my advantage in college because I had some bullies that wanted to take advantage of us, and we pretended actually that we knew voodoo. I said, yeah, I know voodoo, so you better chill. Because, and why is it a big stigma is because most of the population is actually Catholic. So it's a very small part of the population that actually practices voodoo. So it's a big misconception in my culture, in my country, and also the poverty thing is the same thing. But you don't really look poor or whatever. Man, what does that mean? It doesn't make sense.
It can be a partial consolation for you. I was asked once if in Italy we had telephones.
Why?
I don't know. I never asked me, do you have telephones in Italy? He said, yes. We got there.
Actually, I've been fortunate enough to visit Italy, and the first thing I wanted to do was like I want to eat.
Make a phone call.
Well, was to eat pizza. I wanted to eat pizza. That's what I wanted to do.
Where were you?
I was in Milan.
Wrong place.
Yeah, but I was in Switzerland, and I drove down south, and Milan was the closest city, and we didn't have a lot of time between the cities, so I stopped in Milan, did some shopping, and ate some pizza. But still, even if it wasn't the best place for pizza, it still was the best pizza I've ever had in my life. And I remember that moment because I was like, oh man, this is good.
You hit the good one. And Milan does everything in terms of food. Milan is really the food capital of Italy because it's the economic capital.
Exactly.
So the best restaurants are there. So, yes. Making me hungry and nostalgic.
I know. Well, we have some food there, so.
Especially the risotto here in America. I think risotto have heavy cream in there. No, you don't use that at all. No cream in risotto.
Oh, no cream in the risotto? The Italian way?
Yeah, no cream in risotto.
Okay.
No.
So it's American Italian.
Talking about Olive Garden, they'd be like, what?
Oh yeah, right, exactly.
Olive Garden, but when you're here, you're family. So yeah, you're a chef, so obviously you know a lot of the different aspects of food when it comes, to culture.
You have to research. You have to do it. Because there's a lot of things. There's a lot of culture, even if it's in food. If it was in Africa or in Haiti, when it comes here, it gets Americanized.
Right.
And then so we think that when we go to some Italian restaurant, they're gonna have really authentic Italian food. When you're having a Alfredo pasta, which is not Italian.
Oh, it's not Italian?
It's really American.
Let me scratch that up.
And Italian don't really put cream in their food. Their food are very extremely healthy and simply made. So I remember one time I was cooking for one of my private clients, and I was cooking for the weekend, and all the ladies wanted to cook pasta. So I actually was sitting down, I was watching them cooking pasta. It was the most, but there's a little ego between a woman. Like my pasta is better, like I just want to eat. But the way cooking it's very light. It's here I eat pasta and I feel.
Time to go to sleep.
Here you eat broccoli and you feel. You eat salad and you feel.
So it's different.
Yeah.
Background, a different culture. Same thing like our Haitian food is very similar to African food. South America. So I love Venezuelan, Colombian food. Venezuelan are very, very extremely similar.
That's true.
Yeah.
I've had them all.
So if I go to a really good Colombian restaurant, sometimes I feel like I'm home because I have my rice and beans and my meat. Because in African one, I feel at home because I have my beef stew. So it's the culture. If we really open our mind, we realize that we're not just so different.
Right.
We're just we have so much in common.
Exactly.
If we appreciate each other culture, differences, similarities, as a whole, we'll be a much happier world.